victory. Sergey Karjakin was white, Magnus Carlsen was black, and here is what happened. First, 1d4. Finally, something different than e4, and finally the prediction I made early in the match that I actually expected more d4s from Sergey. It finally comes true, so at least I'm not 100% wrong. And after d5, c4, c6, we have what is known as a Slav defense, very, very normal stuff. Knight to c3, knight to f6, and after e3, we get our first real surprise of the game, with jokes aside about Sergey playing the move 1d4. The truth is, the first thing to happen that was a little bit, something that people took note of was the move a6. This is because Magnus Carlsen has only played this variation 2 other times in his career. Once in 2004 against Pintala Harikrishna, and another time in 2007 against Ruslan Ponomarev. So, likely it wasn't on the top of Sergey Karjakin's priority list in terms of preparing, and that might be a little bit suggestive as to why he played the move bishop to d3 here, rather than the more commonly played knight to f3. Knight to f3 is also a move that he played most recently when he faced the 4a6 Slav, but not to say that either one is really better than the other, just to point out that all the little psychology things that might be going on inside these players' heads is worthy of noting. So bishop to d3 was played, and the main line that can occur after bishop to d3 starts with the move b5. Now, after b5, black is trying to force the hand of this c4 pawn, but normally white defends it this way, and one move is bishop to g4 and knight g to e2, and we have a very, very sharp, very, very well-known position that everybody is encouraged to go ahead and look up and check out if they're interested in some of the mainline variations that occur in the 4a6 Slav. But Carlsen, not only was he in the mood to be the first to surprise with 4a6, but he also had an idea in regards to the direction of the game. He wanted to play the move d takes c4, simplifying out the plans to reach what we have is a Moran structure or a Yaroslav structure. I have a whole video series on chess.com that talks specifically about the dynamic of the 2 center pawns versus black's E and C pawns. This is a structure that is it's important to understand, mainly because it occurs in so many different types of Queen's Gambit accepteds, Queen's Gambit declines. It also occurs out of some e4 openings, including the Caro-Kann and the French. And so the idea is that black has a little bit less space. If you look at the pawns in the center, obviously white has the furthest advanced pawn, which if you let white have his way, they'd do things like e4, and then with more control over the critical area of the board, they'd have a little bit of a dominant development heading into the middle game. But black's not going to let that happen, because black has a plan to strike with the move c5. Now, when I mentioned the Moran before I got into this Yaroslav structure sort of tangent, the Moran is the idea where you have a6 supporting the move b5, even though you also have c6 supporting it. And the reason you overprotect this move is that you intend to follow the move b5 with an immediate pawn to c5. And you want to make sure that the b5 pawn stays defended. So black has plans to be aggressive and expand on the queen side, not sitting on the fact that his pieces have less space. He wants to liberate the minors. And white has plans to deal with these shots and either use the open lines to his advantage or parry them and eventually still have the space advantage in the center that we've talked about. Now that we've gone into Danny's sort of, I guess, patented, I'm going to over-explain the opening a little bit so that you have hopefully some sort of fundamental understanding of why the next few moves were what they were. Let's see what the next few moves were. White now goes back to knight f3, which is normal. And just like that, here comes the Moran strike on the queen side with the move b5. C5 first, and after castles, now b5. The bishop retreats. And with the move bishop to b7, we are 100% in theory. Right now, you're looking at the computer evaluation, and it's not giving a lot, right? Essentially, you're looking at a position that is roughly equal. If you let Stockfish or Komodo think forever, the variations are going to stay between plus up to 0.10, like 10, down to like minus 10, depending on whatever idea it thinks of in the moment, right? But at this point, as long as you're in opening theory, the computer evaluation is less important than the plans and understanding the pawn structure, as I've explained. So here black has sort of achieved the goal that you would want to have, in that he's developed this bishop to b7. He has control over the potential 2-pawn strike, as I highlighted as a goal for whites. And white has to deal with the tension here, the c5 d4 tension. White does so most commonly by taking, and one of the reasons is because white is ahead in development. With white already being castled, white is quickly prepared to deal with things like queen takes, rook takes, and then bishop takes c5, because white's in a position to be the aggressor. If we head to the endgame, there are moves like a4. There are other moves in the position that can allow white to take advantage of the fact that he's a little bit further developed and has control over the d-file. But that's not exactly what Carlsen had in mind, and this is the first exciting moment of the game. If we've already described the first surprise being Karjakin 1d4, finally giving up on the Lopez, banging his head against Carlsen's Lopez, and then Magnus making sure he set the tone with the 4a6 Slav. Really, this move here had to be the move that was prepared at home by his team, and the move that really set Karjakin on his heels. No Danny philosophical guessing needed, because the players told us this was the case. Carlsen played the move knight to c6 rather than the common either queen takes d1 giving the d-file, or the other common move bishop takes c5, which gives white the d-file in another way because the king loses his right to castle. Although this was a game played between Serewan and Karpov, a draw in the year 2000. You can look up those two players if you haven't heard their names before. So it's not to say that this is a bad position for black with the king in the center. The king safely tucked itself on e7, and that game was eventually a draw. But Carlsen was neither interested in trading queens and losing castles, nor was he interested in trading queens to give the d-file. He was interested in playing the principal developing move that actually changes the game somewhat, because now if white takes, black will take with the rook, black will own the d-file, black will not lose the right to castle, and that c5 pawn has nowhere else to go, right? Like Chris Farley in a random SNL sketch. He's living in a van down by the river, and he's not getting out soon. So knight to c6 is a rare move, but I love when we see principled rare moves played in World Championship matches, because it means that they were probably rare via different circumstances. The line hasn't been played enough by players at the high level for others to figure this out, or it was prepared but just not given the opportunity. So when you see players play moves that are rare, but suddenly you look at it and say, wow, that's an obviously good way to play this position, it's exciting, because it's one of the things World Championship matches do to contribute to the evolution of chess. These guys have been preparing for months and months and months and keeping secrets, and it allows our knowledge of positions to sometimes evolve. And in some cases, in famous World Championship matches, like Anand's 2 wins over Kramnik when he won the title, with a Moran structure, by the way, when Anand won 2 games back-to-back in those crazy sort of Botvinnik Slavs, it really kind of changed the tone of those games and that variation completely. So I like this move. Not to say that's going to happen here, but given the way this game went, you're going to see that black is quickly not only equalizing, but in the driver's seat. After knight to c6, Karjakin played knight to d2. And why did I say we didn't even have to guess if Danny was right philosophically about whether or not knight c6 surprised Karjakin? Because after knight to c6, Karjakin took 18 minutes before playing the move knight to d2, and watch the evaluation go from plus 0.32 to something that's going to shift drastically in the other direction. That's nearly a swing of half a pawn. It's a move that also just doesn't make sense from the human philosophical perspective. You retreated the knight, which blocks the bishop, which blocks the rook. You know, the knight becomes the old lady who swallowed the fly, and one bad thing leads to another. Of course, there are some principled ideas. If the bishop gets on f3, challenging black's most powerful minor piece, of course, that's not a bad idea for white. If this knight gets into e4 and this pawn is still on c5, that's actually a threat, right? So let's say that for some strange reason black played a terrible move. Now you would see this move as the computer recommends. You can see it right in front of you. Either knight coming to e4, and white has an idea there to hold on to the c5 pawn and maybe go to d6. So there's some ideas behind it, but it's a retreating move. It's a move that's counterintuitive, and Carlsen's principled approach is going to take advantage of that. He takes on c5, and after knight e4 comes with tempo, he simply retreats, and we're still in that position we talked about. Black is ahead in development where he's normally not. The queen trade will not lose black's right to castle, and white has to figure out how, if anything, what, if anything, he can do to keep on equal footing here and keep the initiative. Now, you'll notice the computer, even with time to think, doesn't necessarily like Karjakin's move here. It is the second move. This move b3 is the move that was actually played in the game. But still, I would say that there's a reason why this bishop comes to d2 in most of these variations. One, it's because development, as the position opens up, becomes a premium. This isn't just something you learn at a basic level, and then when you become a GM, they give you a get-out-of-jail-free card and say, hey, you don't have to get castled or develop anymore. Sometimes they understand the exceptions to those rules better than we mortals do. But the rules are still there, and so there's a reason why, as the position opens up, development is at a premium. It needs to be done more quickly. So In the position here, Karjakin does not play the more natural developing move, and instead, by the way, I want to back up quickly and just say that probably instead of knight to d2, the move queen to c2 was the better move. It is a move that has been played against Carlsen's rare knight c6 before, and it would have been a move that more naturally develops pieces, brings the rook to fight for the d file. Would have been better. I always feel bad if I miss the opportunity to just say, I don't want to paint the picture ever biasly, like one side just ran away with it. As much as we all love great stories and we love convincing ourselves of brilliancies, right? It's the knight in shining armor, and we want to be inspired. Chess is a very complicated game. Chess is a very equal game to start, and you never want to have the illusion that your opening is better than somebody else. You can play better than somebody else, but try to always approach chess positions unbiasedly to find the truth, not the answer you're looking to hear. Sounds like a good thing our society could use, right? Instead of looking for affirmation in the media they watch, maybe people could start looking for confirmation of facts. Hey, there's a pro tip right there for everybody. Sorry to get political. Anyway, so after knight d2 and then knight e4, we get back to the position I was just talking about. And as I said, Karjakin did not play the principal bishop d2, but b3. And here comes Carlsen, knight to b4, a very good move that at first the computer doesn't even, I think, appreciate the full value of why bishop d2 was better and why b3 is a mistake. But we're going to find out right now. Not only do I first gain a tempo, but after the move bishop f3, we see Carlsen had his first big chance to perhaps take the initiative home in this game. There's some dynamics here at play. There is an open a1 h8 diagonal. There is a knight on b4 where it wouldn't normally be in a position like this, poking at a pawn on a2. If you combine pressure on a diagonal to remove the only defender of a pawn, that's something to think about. Also the fact that with open lines and potentials for access into these squares, there could be issues at some point. Now, Carlsen played the move that the computer is recommending, at least it was that whole time until just now. Carlsen played the move castles. The problem is the move f5 was much better. Now, after f5, the main point is that if the knight makes some sort of logical move to a square that opens up a discovery, and okay, if you take me, I take you, that sort of thing, we're going to get a variation that really shows why this position is dangerous for white. Black can trade queens, gobble the bishop, and now bring the bishop to the diagonal. Moving the rook would lose on the spot to knight takes a2, followed by forking on c3. So the only move is knight to d4. Well, the problem with that is black now surprisingly just gives up this dominant bishop. Rook takes, still not a possibility because of the move knight to c2. It's coming in and it is very, very strong. It's winning. So if pawn takes, we're in a position where, okay, king to d7 is a move that I would recommend here, but king f7 is fine. You could even argue that just putting the pony on d5 right away makes sense. The point is we have an isolated pawn, a bishop that is stuck to the same color of that pawn. That's the worst case scenario. You always want a bishop on the opposite color of your isolated center pawn, because at least it controls the color squares that the other pawn doesn't, and maybe helps you to punch it through and trade off that weak pawn for a more healthy pawn. And black is going to get a dominant knight and quick access to the files. So, I mean, seriously, as I said during our live chess center, this is like a Carlsen fantasy. You know, this is a dream that he has, like once a week, you know, grinding out a player in an endgame with an isolated pawn. So that would have been a dream. And after f5, because of that, probably what white would need to do is knight to d6 check. But still, after queen takes and we get these trades, you're still going to look at an endgame where, because of this key tempo on the diagonal, and then the knight finding a dominant square, that was another way it could have gone, knight dominant square, but even this shows just how good this position could have been. You're up more than half a pawn here. I don't even care what the computer says. This is a Carlsen win in my book, because black is clearly better. White is 100% on the defensive, and it's a position that black can play for a very long time, Carlsen-esque. So it was strange to both me and all of the fans watching that Carlsen wasn't more aggressive here, didn't look for more opportunities. He castled, computer approved, but not as good. And after bishop a3, he makes the final move that unfortunately revealed to all of us that Carlsen came into both game 6 we saw last time and game 7 with one thing in mind. If I draw both of these games with black, now of the remaining 5 games, I have 3 whites. Karjakin only has 2. Carlsen looks at this match as now, forget about everything games 1 through 7. There are 5 games left. I have 3 whites versus 2, and all I need is 1 win. That's how Carlsen is approaching the rest of the match. My issue is opportunities are opportunities, regardless of what color you had coming in. And I think Carlsen's psychological perspective may have jaded him a little bit to his viewpoint here. You're looking at a position where all three of the top computer moves, none of them are the move that Carlsen played. The move Carlsen played forced lines down, an easily forcing drawn road, but a move that's natural and that defends the bishop. I'll even play a move that's not even in the top three. I'll just play rook to b8 and get the same type of position. My point is, once this bishop is defended, the tactics that have occurred in the game where this knight sacrificed itself to go for the obfuscate bishops, they're not happening anymore. Am I guaranteeing a win for black? Not at all, but this is an endgame that clearly looks better for black. Pieces more developed, pieces more active, and the computer agrees too. If the queens stay on the board, black can probably be better after a move like queen a5. And again, it's dynamic. It's the kind of dynamic equality you can push. I think Carlsen would take those kind of chances even if he had white to start. So for whatever reason, whether it was full preparation ahead of time or just a psychological commitment to take the draw opportunity if it was given, Carlsen played the move rook to c8 here. He allowed the tactic that we're going to see happen, and with it, the full forcing effect. Look at the evaluation shift, though. Right? Now, the computer is overestimating white because computers love pawns and they don't have that horizon effect, whereas a human can see what's beyond the horizon based on patterns they know, right? Computers are just calculating what's in front of them. Even if the mountain's in front of them, they just got to make it to the top. And you're going to see that here. It's one of those rare cases where computers still do think better than humans. Carlsen simply looked ahead, saw an obfuscate bishop ending. He doesn't need to calculate 60 moves to justify the draw, whereas the computer would. So the computer's evaluation didn't just go from black being a little bit better to it being equal. It went from black being a little bit better to now the computer loves white being better. I can tell you that's actually not true. After all the moves the computer is going to suggest, you're going to see we're headed down a completely forced road. Just look at Carlsen will always be playing the top computer move without giving it too much time to even think. And we're going to get into a position that is just a big town, trade town, population, equality town. Population draw town, population way overuse of that term town, and after bishop takes a6, where the computer loves it, we get b4, and as you see, obfuscate bishops, where you establish the pawn on the same color as your bishop, and you can hold back the other pawn. We can't even push 2 because of en passant. The game could have been just agreed to a draw here. Out of respect for the fans, or out of just simple formalities, they played another several moves that I'm not even going to go slow enough for the computer evaluation to keep up with us. We're just going to move and know that the computer's still going to think white's better, even in the final position that's agreed to a draw. As we keep going, we will get there. This is an easy, easy draw. Nothing traded, nothing being done. There's not even a passed pawn to go with it. And eventually, we will get them to agree to a draw, which was right here. So, strange to me to see Carlsen so willing to just stick to the predetermined mindset and match strategy. I understand it, and I don't think he's not the big favorite heading into the last 5 games, but we've already seen him miss opportunities. And again, I think regardless of what is said in the press or in the media, I think as a team, you have to be looking at this situation as, you know, if you get opportunities, regardless of the color at this point in the match, you got to take it. And Carlsen had 2 big ones. One, f5, the most clear one, as we saw. We will again, let me just back up to that so you can remember exactly what I'm talking about. Don't want you to have to do any visualization in your head. The move f5 right there. And then even again, the move, one of the 3 moves the computer recommended, or my move, which was just rook to b8. Any move that didn't allow this whole force combination also would have kept him in the driver's seat. So a little strange, a little awkward. Will the match strategy pay off? I don't know, but we only have 5 more games to find out. And on that note, let's remind you of what the score is in the match so far. It is 3.5, 3.5, and Game 8 is tomorrow, Monday, and Magnus Carlsen will be white. Make sure you're checking out our live Chess Center shows on chess.com TV. Next one will be Monday, November 21st at 5 p.m. Pacific. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to these breakdowns here. Hopefully there's some tips and some things as we describe the position. Having the computer analysis maybe is a perk. Leave a comment in the forum here. Let me know. Yes to the computer analysis. No. You'll notice that even if I have computer analysis, I think one thing you can give me credit for is I'm not the kind of teacher who's just regurgitating what the computer says. I honestly don't give a bleep. I don't give a bleep, 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 bleep. But some people request it. Some people love it. I come into these analysis sessions to give you the advice as I see it, positionally, strategically, patterns, things you can apply to your own both X's and O's and your own thinking process. The computer hopefully backs that up as we give these tips, and I think it does. But the main point is to have sort of confirmation that you're on the right path, not try to play like a computer. And that's advice you can take home. Have confirmation of the facts of the position. Don't look for affirmation. And maybe if we apply that across other spectrums, who knows? Maybe our society will